courtroom went completely silent. Everyone stared at the small girl walking to the witness stand. She was only 9 years old. She held a stuffed rabbit tight against her chest. Her blonde hair shined under the bright lights. This was Ruby Ashford. Her father was a billionaire named Preston Ashford. Everything in this case depended on what she would say next. Preston sat forward in his chair. His expensive suit looked perfect. His face showed confidence. He was a man who always got what he wanted. For the past hour, he told everyone a terrible story. He said his innocent daughter was beaten by the woman he trusted to care for her. The accused woman sat across from him. Her name was Grace Thompson. She was a black maid. Her hands shook in her lap. Her eyes filled with tears. Her whole future depended on what this child would say. The prosecutor walked slowly to Ruby. "Sweetheart, can you tell us what happened? Did Miss Grace hurt you?" The entire courtroom held its breath. Preston smiled slightly. He practiced this moment with Ruby many times. He told her what to say. "Family protects family," he said. "Just say what Daddy told you." Ruby's small voice cut through the silence with unexpected power. "No." One word. Just 2 letters. But it exploded like a bomb. "Grace never hurt me. She loves me." People gasped. Reporters moved forward fast. Preston's smile disappeared. His face turned dark and desperate. "She's the only one who ever listens to me," Ruby said. Her voice got stronger with each word. "The only one who sees me." Preston jumped to his feet. "Emily, stop this." "Ruby," the girl said, tears now running down her face. "My name is Ruby, Daddy, and you'd know that if you were ever home." The judge hit his wooden hammer hard. "Mr. Ashford, sit down, or you'll be removed from this courtroom." But Ruby wasn't done. She turned to face her father completely. This tiny girl in a powder blue dress spoke words that would destroy a billionaire's empire. "Why are you lying, Daddy? Why are you trying to take Grace away from me? She's my family. She's all I have." And there it was. The moment that would be on the news everywhere. The moment that proved the most powerful voice in the room sometimes belongs to the smallest person. But how did it come to this? How did a maid and a billionaire end up in a courtroom battle that would show ugly truths about power, pride, and the cost of love? To understand that, we need to go back to where it all started. Before we continue, if you believe in justice over wealth, hit that like button. And stay until the end, because what happens next will restore your faith in truth. Grace Thompson stood outside the big iron gates of the Ashford mansion. She held her resume in one hand. She whispered a prayer under her breath. The house in front of her looked like something from a movie. It had 3 stories made of stone and glass. The lawns were perfectly cut and seemed to go on forever. A fountain sat in the circular driveway. Probably cost more than everything Grace ever owned in her whole life. She was 32 years old. A single mother of 2 boys. They were 7 and 10 years old. Their father left 3 years ago. He left nothing but broken promises and empty bank accounts. Since then, Grace worked as a grocery store cashier during the day. She worked as a diner waitress at night. But somehow, she still didn't have enough money every month. The eviction notices kept coming. Her oldest son needed glasses but couldn't get them. Her youngest wore shoes that were 2 sizes too small for 6 months. When she saw the ad for a live-in housekeeper job with generous pay, she applied right away. She knew she wasn't qualified enough, but she was desperate enough to try. The interview was with Preston Ashford himself. He was 41 years old. His hair had silver streaks that made him look important instead of old. His handshake was firm. His questions were direct. He looked at her quickly and made fast decisions. He didn't ask about her children. He didn't ask about her dreams or her story. He asked if she could cook, clean, follow instructions, and keep secrets. "I can do all of that," Grace said quietly. "I'm a hard worker, Mr. Ashford, and I need this job." Something in her honesty must have touched him. He hired her right there. "You'll start Monday. Room and meals included. You'll have Sundays off to visit your children. I assume you'll arrange care for them?" "Yes, sir. My mother will take them." "Good." One more thing, Miss Thompson. His eyes got harder. My daughter Ruby. She's 6 years old. She's difficult. Many nannies have quit. I need someone who won't run away at the first tantrum. Can you handle that? Grace thought of her own boys. She thought of the nights she held them through nightmares and fevers and fears. I can handle that, sir. What Preston didn't tell her, what he couldn't bring himself to say, was that Ruby wasn't difficult. Ruby was drowning. Drowning in a mansion full of things but empty of people. Drowning in the absence of the mother who died bringing her into the world. Drowning in the shadow of a father who worked 80 hours a week because facing his daughter meant facing his grief. Grace met Ruby on her first day. The little girl sat on the floor of her bedroom. It was a princess paradise with pink walls and stuffed animals and toys she never played with. Ruby stared at Grace with serious blue eyes. Are you the new maid? Ruby asked. I am. My name's Grace. What's yours? Ruby. Are you going to leave like the others? The question hurt Grace's heart. She knelt down to Ruby's level. Not if I can help it, sweetheart. Everyone says that. Then they leave. Grace saw it then. The walls this 6-year-old built around herself. She expected everyone to abandon her. Loneliness was carved into her small face. Tell you what, Grace said softly. Why don't we make a deal? I promise to stay, and you promise to give me a chance. How's that sound? Ruby thought about this. Do you know how to make cookies? The best chocolate chip cookies you've ever tasted. The smallest smile touched Ruby's lips. Okay, deal. That afternoon, they baked cookies together in the mansion's huge kitchen. Ruby stood on a step stool. She measured ingredients with serious concentration. Grace guided her hands. She taught her to fold in the chocolate chips gently. She explained why you couldn't eat raw cookie dough even though it was tempting. When Preston came home that night, late as always, he found his daughter asleep on the couch. A blanket was tucked around her. The smell of fresh cookies filled the house. Grace sat nearby, reading a book in the dim light. She ate 3 cookies and asked if we could make them again tomorrow, Grace said quietly. Then she showed me her dollhouse. We played until she got tired. Preston looked at his sleeping daughter. Something unreadable crossed his face. The others usually had her in bed by 7. It's almost 9. She wasn't ready for bed at 7, sir. She needed to play, to talk, to feel like someone was listening. Preston's jaw tightened. I'm paying you to maintain the household, Miss Thompson, not to tell me how to parent. Grace lowered her eyes. Yes, sir. I apologize. But as Preston walked away, he stopped at the doorway. The cookies. They smell good. It was the closest thing to approval she'd get from him for a long time. The weeks turned into months. Grace fell into a rhythm. She cleaned, cooked, organized. And slowly, carefully, she became the steady presence Ruby desperately needed. She braided Ruby's hair before school. She packed lunches with little notes inside. She helped with homework at the kitchen table. She read bedtime stories in funny voices that made Ruby giggle. She stayed beside Ruby's bed on the nights when Ruby woke up crying from nightmares about a mother she never knew. Preston noticed, even if he didn't say anything. He noticed how Ruby stopped throwing tantrums. How she smiled more. How she'd race to the door when Grace came back from her Sunday visits with her own children. Ruby would throw her arms around Grace's waist like she was coming home from war instead of just a day away. He noticed, and something dark began to grow in his chest. 2 years passed. Ruby turned 8, then 9. The bond between her and Grace grew deeper. It became something that went beyond employer and employee. Ruby started calling her Mama Grace when Preston wasn't around. Grace would correct her gently at first. I'm not your mama, sweet girl. But Ruby would just hug her tighter and whisper, You're the closest thing I have. Then came the morning that changed everything. Preston was in his home office. He was preparing for a board meeting. Ruby walked in wearing a short-sleeved shirt. He looked up, annoyed at the interruption. Then he froze. Dark purple bruises circled Ruby's upper arm. They looked like fingerprints. What happened to your arm? His voice was sharp and cold. Ruby looked down, confused. Oh, I fell yesterday. On the stairs. I was running too fast and... Who was with you? Grace. She picked me up and... Preston's face changed. The blood drained from it. Then it rushed back red with rage. Grace did this to you? What? No, Daddy, I fell. But Preston wasn't listening. He stared at those bruises. In them, he saw everything he refused to see for 2 years. He saw his daughter loving someone else more than she loved him. He saw a maid, a woman he paid, becoming more important in Ruby's life than her own father. He saw his failure reflected in every mark on her skin. And Preston Ashford didn't accept failure. He pulled out his phone. His hands shook with fury. He dialed 911. I need to report a case of child abuse. Grace was in the kitchen making Ruby's favorite breakfast, pancakes with strawberries. She hummed softly while flipping them on the griddle. Ruby sat at the counter doing her homework, swinging her legs back and forth. Mama Grace, can we go to the park after school today? Ruby asked. We'll see, sweetheart. I have to. The front door burst open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the marble hallway. Grace turned, confused. 3 police officers walked into the kitchen. Their faces were serious. Their hands rested on their belts. Grace Thompson? One of them asked. Yes? What's happening? You're under arrest for child abuse. The spatula fell from Grace's hand. It clattered against the tile floor. What? No, there must be some mistake. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. No. Ruby screamed. She jumped off her chair and ran to Grace. Don't touch her. She didn't do anything. One officer gently moved Ruby aside. Another pulled Grace's arms behind her back. The cold metal handcuffs clicked into place. Grace's mind went blank with shock. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. Ruby, it's okay. Grace tried to say, but her voice cracked. It's going to be okay. You're hurting her. Ruby cried. Tears poured down her face. Daddy, Daddy, tell them to stop. Preston appeared in the doorway. He stood there with his arms crossed. His face was cold, empty. He didn't look at Grace. He looked past her, through her, like she was already gone. Daddy, please, Ruby begged. Tell them Grace didn't do anything. Tell them. Ruby, go to your room, Preston said quietly. No. Not until you tell them the truth. Now, Ruby. Grace's heart shattered as she was led out of the kitchen. Ruby's screams followed her down the hallway. Don't take her. Please don't take her. Grace. Grace. The last thing Grace saw before the police car door closed was Ruby's face pressed against the window, her small hands slapping the glass, her mouth forming words Grace couldn't hear. In the police station, everything became a blur. Fingerprints, photographs, questions she couldn't answer because she didn't understand. A holding cell that smelled like bleach and despair. Other women sitting on benches, their faces hollow with defeat. Grace sat in the corner. She pulled her knees to her chest. Her mind raced with terrible thoughts. What about Ruby? What about her own boys? Her mother would be expecting her Sunday. What would she tell them? How would she explain that their mother was in jail? God, she whispered. Please, please help me understand what's happening. Hours later, a lawyer came. He was young, maybe 28. His suit didn't fit quite right. He sat across from her with a folder and a nervous expression. Miss Thompson, my name is James Porter. I've been assigned to your case. I didn't do anything, Grace said immediately. I would never hurt Ruby. Never. I understand. But we need to talk about the evidence. Mr. Ashford has photographs of bruises on his daughter's arm. He claims they're from you grabbing her. She fell. She was playing on the stairs and she fell. I picked her up. I comforted her. That's all. James wrote notes quickly. Do you have any witnesses? Anyone who saw what happened? Grace thought hard. No. It was just us. Everyone else had the day off. That's unfortunate. James looked worried. Miss Thompson, I'll be honest with you. Preston Ashford is one of the most powerful men in this city. He has unlimited resources, the best lawyers, connections everywhere. This is going to be very difficult. Are you saying I should give up?
No.
I'm saying we need to be realistic about what we're facing. Grace looked at this young lawyer who seemed more afraid than she was. Mr. Porter, I don't have money. I don't have power. I don't have connections. All I have is the truth. And the truth is that I love that little girl like she's my own. I would die before I hurt her. So you need to decide right now if you're going to fight for me or if you're going to let a rich man's lies win. James stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. He closed his folder. Okay, then we fight. The story hit the news the next morning. Grace's face, her booking photo, was on every channel. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire's daughter abused by trusted maid. Woman arrested for beating 9-year-old girl. Preston Ashford speaks out. I trusted her with my child. Grace's bail was set at $50,000. She couldn't afford it. She sat in that cell and watched the news coverage on a small TV in the common area. Each report made her sound more guilty, more monstrous. Preston gave an interview on the steps of the courthouse. He wore a dark suit. His voice trembled with fake emotion. My daughter is my whole world. When I saw those bruises, when she told me what happened, my heart broke. I trusted this woman. I brought her into my home. And she betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Ashford, how is Ruby handling this? She's traumatized. She's scared. But she's safe now. That's what matters. Grace wanted to scream at the TV. Ruby wasn't traumatized by her. Ruby was traumatized by watching her only source of love and comfort get dragged away in handcuffs. If you're feeling angry right now, drop a comment saying justice for Grace and hit that subscribe button. This story is far from over. In her cell, Grace received one visitor besides her lawyer. Her mother, Dorothy, came on the third day. She was 72 years old with silver hair and kind eyes that now brimmed with tears. Baby girl, she whispered, holding Grace's hands through the visitor window. Tell me what happened. Grace explained everything. The fall, the bruises, Preston's rage, the arrest. Dorothy shook her head. That man is threatened by you. What? He's threatened because his daughter loves you more than she loves him. And instead of being a better father, he's trying to destroy you. Dorothy squeezed Grace's hands tighter. But we've been through worse, haven't we? Remember when your daddy left? When we had nothing but each other and faith. We survived that. We'll survive this. What about the boys? They're scared. But I told them their mama didn't do anything wrong. And I told them to pray. Because God sees everything, Grace. He sees the truth even when the world doesn't. Grace nodded, tears sliding down her face. Tell them I love them. Tell them I'll come home. I will. And Grace? That little girl Ruby. She loves you. And children don't lie. When this goes to trial, her voice will matter more than any of that man's money. Grace wanted to believe that. She needed to believe that. 3 weeks later, Grace was finally released on a reduced bail that a community fund helped pay for. But she couldn't go back to the mansion. She couldn't see Ruby. A restraining order prevented her from going within 500 feet of the child she loved. She moved into her mother's tiny apartment. She shared a room with her sons. They hugged her so tight the first night she thought her ribs might crack. But she didn't care. She held them and cried and promised she'd never leave them again. James Porter visited her there to prepare for trial. He spread papers across the small kitchen table. The prosecution's case is straightforward. They have the photographs of bruises. They have Preston's testimony. They have medical records showing Ruby was injured. But they don't have Ruby's testimony, Grace said. She'll tell the truth. James looked uncomfortable. Grace, she's 9 years old. And she's Preston Ashford's daughter. He's had weeks to work on her. To tell her what to say. To convince her that protecting him means lying about you. Ruby wouldn't lie. She's a child who loves her father. Even if he's terrible to her, he's still her father. She might be too afraid to go against him. Grace felt cold spread through her chest. So you think we'll lose? I think. James chose his words carefully. I think we need to prepare for the possibility that even if you're innocent, the jury might side with the billionaire. Then what do I do? You tell your truth. You hold your head high, and you trust that sometimes, just sometimes, justice actually works. The weeks leading up to trial were torture. Grace couldn't work. Her name was everywhere. People recognized her in the grocery store. Some whispered. Some stared with disgust. One woman actually spat at her feet. But some people believed her. Some people reached out with messages of support. I worked for rich families too, one woman wrote. I know how they treat us. I believe you. Grace held onto those messages like lifelines. She also thought about Ruby constantly. Was she okay? Was she scared? Did she miss Grace? Or had Preston convinced her that Grace was the enemy? At night, Grace prayed. She prayed for strength. She prayed for truth. She prayed for Ruby's voice to be heard. And she prayed that when the trial came, the little girl she loved would find the courage to speak. The courtroom was massive. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Dark wood covered the walls. Everything felt designed to intimidate, to remind people like Grace that they didn't belong in places like this. Preston sat at the prosecutor's table looking calm and powerful. His legal team consisted of 4 lawyers in expensive suits. They moved with confidence. They owned the space. Grace sat at the defense table with James. Just the 2 of them against an army. The jury filed in. 12 people who would decide her fate. Grace studied their faces. Most were white. Most were middle class or wealthy based on their clothes. Would they see her as innocent? Or would they see what Preston wanted them to see? A poor black woman who got violent with a rich white child? The judge entered. Everyone stood. The trial began. The prosecutor spoke first. His voice was smooth and confident. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a simple case. A man trusted a woman to care for his most precious treasure, his daughter. And that woman betrayed that trust in the most violent way possible. The evidence will show that Grace Thompson grabbed 9-year-old Ruby Ashford hard enough to leave bruises. Hard enough to hurt her. Hard enough to traumatize her. Money and status don't matter here. What matters is protecting children. And today we will prove that Grace Thompson is guilty. Grace's hands shook. She clasped them together under the table. Then James stood. He looked nervous. His voice wasn't as smooth, but his words were honest. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear a story, but it's not the story the prosecution wants you to believe. It's a story about a man who failed his daughter. A man who watched someone else give his daughter the love he couldn't. A man who couldn't handle that, so he created a lie. Terrible, destructive lie. Grace Thompson is not guilty, and before this trial ends, you'll know that. Because the truth has a way of coming out, especially when it comes from the mouth of a child. The testimony began. Preston took the stand first. He played his part perfectly. The grieving father, the protective parent. He described finding the bruises. He described his horror, his rage, his determination to protect his daughter. Mr. Ashford, the prosecutor asked, what made you suspect Miss Thompson? Preston's jaw tightened. Because my daughter was afraid of her. Because she became withdrawn. Because I'd see her flinch when Grace entered the room. Grace wanted to shout. That was a lie. All of it was lies. James cross-examined him. Mr. Ashford, how many hours per week do you spend with your daughter? Preston shifted. I work long hours. But I provide. How many hours, sir? Perhaps 10. 15 on a good week. And Miss Thompson? She was with Ruby constantly. So she spent more time with Ruby than you did? That was her job. And in all that time, did you ever witness Miss Thompson being violent with Ruby? No, but did any of your staff report concerns about Miss Thompson's treatment of Ruby?
No.
So the first time you had any concerns was when you saw bruises after Ruby told you she fell? Preston's face reddened. She was protecting Grace. Children do that with their abusers. James paused. Or maybe, Mr. Ashford, she was telling the truth. And you chose not to believe her. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge called for order. More witnesses came. The household staff, the cook, the gardener. None of them had anything bad to say about Grace. But none of them were brave enough to defend her either. They gave careful, neutral answers. They protected themselves. Grace felt her hope fading with each testimony. This was going exactly as James predicted. Preston's power was winning. Then the prosecutor said the words everyone was waiting for. "Your Honor, we call our final witness, Ruby Ashford." The courtroom doors opened, and everything was about to change. The courtroom doors opened slowly. Every head turned. Every breath held. Ruby walked in holding a stuffed rabbit. Her steps were small and careful. Her blonde hair was pulled back with a blue ribbon. She wore a white dress that made her look even smaller than she was. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. A court officer led her gently to the witness stand. Ruby climbed up. Her feet didn't touch the ground when she sat down. She looked around the big room with wide, scared eyes. Then her eyes found Grace. For one moment, everything else disappeared. Grace smiled at her softly. She tried to send all her love across that distance. Ruby's bottom lip trembled. She held her rabbit tighter. The judge spoke kindly. "Hello, Ruby. Do you know why you're here today?" Ruby nodded. "You need to speak out loud, sweetheart, so everyone can hear you." "Yes, sir," Ruby whispered. "Good. Now you're going to answer some questions. Just tell the truth, okay? No one here is going to hurt you." Ruby nodded again, then remembered. "Yes, sir." The prosecutor stood up. He walked toward her slowly. His voice was gentle. "Ruby, my name is Mr. Williams. I just want to ask you a few questions. Is that okay?" "Okay." "Ruby, do you know Miss Grace Thompson?" "Yes." "How do you know her?" "She takes care of me. She's been taking care of me for 3 years. And during those 3 years, has Miss Grace ever been mean to you?" Ruby was quiet. She looked down at her rabbit. Preston leaned forward in his seat. His eyes were locked on his daughter. His jaw was tight. "Ruby?" The prosecutor prompted gently. "Has Miss Grace ever been mean to you?" Ruby's voice was so quiet everyone had to strain to hear. "No." The prosecutor blinked. "I'm sorry. Could you speak up?" "No," Ruby said louder. "Grace is never mean to me." Whispers started in the courtroom. The prosecutor looked confused. "But Ruby, you have bruises on your arm. How did you get those bruises?" "I fell." "You fell?" "Yes. I was playing on the stairs. I was running and I slipped. I fell down 4 steps. And was Miss Grace there when this happened?" "Yes." "What did she do?" Ruby's eyes filled with tears. "She ran to me. She picked me up. She asked if I was hurt. She checked my arm and my legs. She took me to the kitchen and put ice on my arm. Then she made me soup. Then she held me until I felt better." The courtroom erupted in whispers. People turned to each other in shock. Reporters wrote frantically in their notebooks. Preston's face went white, then red. His hands gripped the table in front of him. The prosecutor looked rattled. "Ruby, are you saying Miss Grace didn't hurt you? She didn't grab you?" "No." Ruby's voice got stronger, louder. "Grace would never hurt me. Never. She loves me." "But your father said." "My father is lying," Ruby shouted. The whispers turned into gasps. The judge hit his hammer. "Order." But Ruby wasn't done. She turned in her seat to face Preston directly. Tears poured down her face. Her small voice shook with anger and hurt. "Daddy, why are you doing this? Why are you lying about Grace?" Preston started to stand. "Ruby, you don't understand." "Sit down, Mr. Ashford," the judge ordered. "You're never home, Daddy," Ruby continued. Her words came faster now, like a dam breaking. "You're never there. You don't know me. You don't see me. Grace does. Grace is the one who braids my hair in the morning. Grace is the one who helps me with my homework. Grace is the one who holds me when I have nightmares about Mommy." Grace covered her mouth with her hand. Tears streamed down her face. "When I'm sad, Grace sits with me. When I'm scared, Grace sings to me. When I'm sick, Grace stays by my bed all night. Where are you, Daddy? Where are you when I need you? Preston's face crumbled. For the first time, he looked small, broken. Grace didn't hurt me, Ruby said, her voice breaking. You did. You hurt me by never being there. You hurt me by trying to take away the only person who loves me. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the reporters stopped writing. Ruby wiped her tears with her sleeve. I don't want Grace to go away. She's my family. She's all I have. The prosecutor stood frozen. He didn't know what to say. His whole case just fell apart. James stood quickly. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? You may. James walked to Ruby. His voice was gentle. Ruby, you're very brave. Thank you for telling the truth. Just one question. When you call Grace your family, what do you mean? Ruby looked at Grace. Her tears fell, but she smiled. I mean, she's my mama. Not the mama who had me, but the mama who stayed. The mama who chose me every single day. Grace sobbed openly now. She didn't care who saw. Her heart was breaking and healing at the same time. Thank you, Ruby, James said softly. No further questions. The judge looked at Ruby with kind eyes. You may step down, sweetheart. You did very well. Ruby climbed down from the stand. But instead of going to the court officer, she ran. She ran straight to Grace. Miss, you can't. The officer started. But the judge raised his hand. Let her go. Ruby crashed into Grace's arms. They held each other and cried. The whole courtroom watched. Some people wiped their own tears. I told them, Mama Grace, Ruby whispered into Grace's shoulder. I told them the truth. You were so brave, baby girl. So brave. If this moment gave you chills, hit that like button and comment truth wins below. And don't go anywhere, this story isn't over yet. The judge called a short recess. When they returned, the jury was ready to deliberate. They filed out of the room. The wait began. Grace held Ruby's hand. The court officer said Ruby could sit with her during the verdict. Preston sat alone at his table. His lawyers whispered to each other nervously. He didn't look at his daughter. He couldn't. 30 minutes passed. Then the jury returned. That was fast. James whispered to Grace. That's usually a good sign. Everyone stood as the jury entered. They sat down. The foreman, a woman in her 50s with gray hair, held a piece of paper. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. What say you? The foreman looked directly at Grace. We find the defendant, Grace Thompson, not guilty on all charges. The courtroom exploded. People clapped. Some cheered. Ruby jumped up and hugged Grace so tight. Grace couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only hold Ruby and thank God. The judge hit his hammer several times. Order. Order in this court. When everyone quieted, he continued. His voice was stern. Furthermore, after reviewing the evidence and testimony, it's clear to this court that these charges were false. The court will be pursuing charges of perjury and filing a false police report against Preston Ashford. Preston's head dropped. His lawyers immediately started talking to him in urgent whispers. The judge wasn't finished. Mr. Ashford, you wasted this court's time. You traumatized your daughter. And you attempted to destroy an innocent woman's life because of your own insecurities as a father. You should be ashamed. Preston said nothing. There was nothing he could say. Miss Thompson, the judge said, his voice softer now, you're free to go. And for what it's worth, I hope you continue to be the light in that child's life that you clearly have been. Thank you, Your Honor, Grace whispered. As people started to leave, Preston finally looked at his daughter. Ruby was wrapped in Grace's arms, her face buried in Grace's shoulder. She didn't even glance at him. He stood. He walked toward them slowly. Ruby. Ruby turned. Her face was tear-stained, but her eyes were steady. What, Daddy? Preston's voice cracked. I'm sorry. Are you sorry you lied? Or are you sorry you got caught? Preston flinched. He had no answer. I don't hate you, Daddy, Ruby said quietly. But I don't trust you anymore. And I don't want to live with you. Preston's face went pale. Ruby, you're my daughter. Then act like my father. Ruby's voice rose. Stop trying to control me. Stop hurting the people I love. Just be my dad. Really be my dad. Not just someone who pays for things. Preston stood there, frozen, broken. Then he turned and walked away. His lawyers followed him out. He left the courtroom alone. The sun was warm on Grace's face. She sat on the porch of a small house. Not a mansion, but a real home. Ruby sat next to her, coloring in a notebook. Grace's two sons played basketball in the driveway. Their laughter filled the air. After the trial, Preston didn't fight when Grace petitioned for custody. He knew he couldn't win. He knew he didn't deserve to win. He signed the papers without contest. Ruby moved in with Grace officially. Preston still saw Ruby once a month for supervised visits. He was trying. Slowly. He wasn't good at it yet. But he was trying. Ruby looked up from her coloring.
Mama grace.
Yes, baby? Do you think Daddy will ever really change? Grace chose her words carefully. I think people can change when they want to, when they're ready. Your daddy has a long way to go. But maybe one day. Do you think I should forgive him? That's up to you, sweetheart. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It just means you don't let the hurt control you anymore. Ruby thought about that. Then she smiled. I'm happy here. With you. With our family. Grace pulled her close. Me too, baby girl. Me too. One of Grace's sons called out. Mom! Ruby! Come play. Ruby jumped up. Come on, Mama Grace. Grace laughed. She stood up and followed Ruby into the driveway. They played until the sun started to set. Until the sky turned pink and gold. Until the air got cool and fireflies started to appear. Later that night, Grace tucked Ruby into bed. She pulled the blankets up and smoothed Ruby's hair back.
Mama grace.
Ruby whispered. Yes. Thank you for never giving up on me. Even when it was hard. Grace kissed her forehead. Baby girl, giving up on you was never an option. Not ever. I love you. I love you too. More than you'll ever know. As Grace turned off the light and closed the door, she whispered a prayer of thanks. For truth. For justice. For second chances. For the little girl who found her voice when it mattered most. Because in the end, it wasn't money that won. It wasn't power. It wasn't influence. It was love. Pure, simple, unbreakable love. And a child brave enough to speak it. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Tales Cleave for more powerful stories. Drop a comment below telling us what you learned from Grace and Ruby's journey. Remember, truth always wins when we're brave enough to speak it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.